Unique skills have always been, interesting. Not all sombers have unique skills to display, and for some others, the skill is practically synonymous with the sword itself, to the point that it becomes known among the player base as a glorified casting stick. They can be customized and improved variants of regular skills, they can have support utility like Devourer of Worlds, and a few of them even have the sheer impertinence to be a spitting image of the regular skill while going by a completely different title. These are unsurprisingly my least favorite unique skills. Take this one for instance. Yeah, I'm not even gonna rank this one. This is the Soldier of Godric of unique skills. It's a two-part skill that, when held in the offhand, is literally just a left-handed heavy attack. The offhand skill is prioritized over the main hand skill, completely blocking whatever ash you have on your main weapon from being usable while this is in your hand. For the first two torches you'll run into, this isn't a huge problem since the ashes are changeable, but for torches like the Sentry's Torch, the single torch that arguably needs this flexibility the most, you have no choice but to brute force it into the rest of your build. People have familiarized themselves with particular routes within the Ordina Everjail, specifically not to aggro the Black Knives. That means having to fight with this torch in your hand is literally less fun than just not fighting them, and I think that might be the worst thing you can ever say about something in a video game. That'd be like if I started playing Enlisted but unbound my Switch weapon key so I was stuck with some dumb pistol for the whole match. Oh yeah, this video's sponsored by Enlisted. Enlisted is a squad-based first-person shooter now available for free on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. You want PvP? Enlisted's got it. You want PvE? Enlisted's got it. Wage war against other players by leading your own force of AI troops that battle against the squads of others using iconic historical weapons like the Johnson LMG and vehicles like the infamous King Tiger, all of which are realistically modeled after their authentic real-world counterparts. Fight on the side of the United States, Germany, the Soviet Union, or Japan, and participate in some of World War II's most historically significant battles. Each individual squad unit comes with talents and weaknesses that allow creative strategies based on their loadout, special abilities, and preferred positioning. But that doesn't mean your weaker units are safe in a tank, because each vehicle has an advanced damage model that can be crippled or even detonated completely depending on where it takes fire. So if you aren't careful, you can have your whole operation blown to shit by someone who just got in a lucky shot. Enlisted runs on one of the most heavily optimized engines known as the Daegor engine, designed to give players a lag-free experience and allows even potato PCs to run the game on higher graphic settings without compromising frame rates. You can play Enlisted right now for free on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation using my sign-up link in the description and pinned comment. If you sign up on PC, you receive 4,000 silver, 3 full days of premium time, and you get a bonus pack upon initial sign-in. The USA bonus pack gives you an on-field 14 and a Colt revolver, but you even have the option to switch your browser language to German, Japanese, or Russian before opening the pack, and it will give you a bonus pack with weapons originating from the country you selected. That's not even an exploit. They wanted me to say that. Number 88, Storm Kick. Storm Kick is busted, but like in the complete wrong direction. It's unironically cracked, and when I say cracked, what I really mean is fatally flawed from the foundation upward. I've seen running heavies from a thrusting sword deal more damage. I'm pretty sure I could do my best impression of a running heavy attack in real life and do more damage to something than this unique skill would. But let's forget all the Major League number crunching for a minute. Let's just take off our esports helmets for a second. Just fucking... Alright, here we go. You've played Sekiro, right? Most of you have. You know shit like the High Monk, Senpu leaping kicks. Shit, we don't even need to go outside of the game. Even Malenia has that weird dick-ass roundhouse kick that does like 7 damage. I don't get it. You had access to all the animations you needed. Better yet, just don't even name it the Storm Kick. You could have called it something completely different and we would all be none the wiser. Does this shit have any hyper armor at all? Number 87, Knowledge Above All. Okay, so here's why this skill objectively sucks. The magic and holy elements go out of their way to show people just how diametrically opposed they are as forces, and this carries over into gameplay pretty well. You will almost never find a wholly aligned enemy that isn't weak to magic, and vice versa. This means by using the skill and increasing your window for magic damage, you subsequently limit the amount of foots up the ass you can take from wholly aligned enemies. 10% more damage is not the benchmark where you need to start saying, this is too strong, this needs to trade with something. I can't even think of a way to roast the people who use it because I don't think there's a single person that wants to. How the fuck do I roast empty space? Number 86, Death Flare. Well, let's just leave it at this. The sooner you stop making yourself miserable by trying to brute force this meme of a skill into your builds just because you want to say you did, the more people in life will actually start respecting you. I've been throwing out the olive branch that the follow-up bullet does some good damage for way too long, and I think it's time to start questioning why that bullet takes 2 whole animations just to get to in the first goddamn place. Imagine if in the middle of an incredibly long windup you had to press a second button just to actually get to the attack, the good part. How How did this even get made? Number 85, Soul Stifler. Hey, come here. Yeah, Stifler, you. Stop trying to be like Golden Vow. We already have Golden Vow. It's called Golden Vow. You're not like Golden Vow. You're a reverse osmosis debasement of the very ground Golden Vow walks on that can't even stack with Acid Spray Mist, Shriek of Milos, and Grail's Roar. Soul Stifler just doesn't know how to stop embarrassing itself. It's the one coworker that can't stop wasting time near the vending machines and gets mad whenever someone tells him he's close to a deadline. Number 84, Firebreather. What an incredibly worthless skill. It's almost never going to deal damage I would consider delicious, at least not without some serious help from a bunch of different talismans, a crystal tier, and some merchant's jock strap that gives you a 5% torch damage boost or something. But the fact that this isn't listed as a unique skill in the game, but can't be put on torches anyways, makes this skill only available on the Steel Wire Torch, making Firebreather a colossal fucking failure that should feel ashamed of its audacity to even breathe anything when it gets out of bed in the morning. Doesn't stack with the Roar Medallion, but gets boosted by the Blue Dancer charm? Go fuck yourself. Number 83, Blade of Gold. The dagger category by itself has tons of options that do plenty of different jobs way better, but the Blade of Calling feels the need to hide itself away from plain sight in an effort to scam innocent Tarnished into thinking they've picked up something that isn't gonna get traffic jammed here in about 2 hours when they're marching down the branches of the Halig Tree. I don't give a shit how funny it is that I can turn a humanoid enemy into a bowling ball hurtling towards 10 of his buddies. This is never going to be good. It's highly telegraphed in PvP, does holy damage and not nearly enough of it in PvE, and Melina should be ashamed of herself for bringing her fucking cat food opener to a fight with a literal demigod. Number 82, Devourer of Worlds. I was curious about how this skill worked mechanically, and what I saw in the params honestly just pissed me off. Motion value of 200 and still has paper cut adjacent damage, has 2 different IDs leading me to assume the initial ground poke thing is somehow an attack that you can hit people with. Why does this have a poison V of 185? There's nothing here! What are you multiplying? Number 81, Corpse Wax Cutter. I just hard disagree with everything this skill is. I disagree with its construction, its visual effects, the thought process that went into giving one of 4 Black Blade weapons a unique skill that barely tickles the scrotum of the word unique. The motion values make me sick to my stomach. The fact that the damage done by the actual hitbox of the sword scales with weapon level, but the projectile scales with faith. Everything down to the cold, dead hands of the boss I pry it from makes me viscerally upset. Whenever I think about this skill, I have to stop everything I'm doing because of how much raw energy I have to direct into just hating this piece of shit. Number 80, the Buckler Parry. Long story short, the Buckler Parry has 8 startup frames and then 10 active frames, making it significantly quicker and more reaction-based than most basic parries. There's also an incredibly obvious explanation for why this salad bowl disguised as a shield can't contend with almost any other parry ash. Stormwall has 2 more startup frames, which is honestly a negligible difference most of the time, and the same amount of active frames. Other niche parry ashes like Carian Retaliation and Golden Parry are set up even better with 12 active frames and can be put on any shield that isn't a great shield, leaving Buckler Parry in an objective state of uselessness. Number 79, the Nox Sword's Flowing Form. A motion value of 220 looks impressive, and I'll be honest, it kind of is impressive in most cases. Giant Hunt has 220. Giant Hunt is good, right? Queen's Black Flame has 220. I think Starcaller Cry has a couple 2s in there somewhere. But the thing is, curved swords do not benefit from high MVs. The only thing that can possibly make a curved sword exist in the same galaxy as good is high status modifiers that turn your character into a goddamn meat processor. The damage on the sword's flowing form isn't laughably bad or anything, but it is extremely disappointing, can only hit once unlike its polished ballsack counterpart, and struggles to flinch any enemy that's too big for a booster seat. Number 78, Familial Rancor. People have locked themselves in a months-long arm wrestle trying to decide between this and Ancient Death Rancor. ADR tends to have an easier time flinching enemies, and its friendlier FP efficiency makes it more approachable in most cases. But if everything manages to land as intended, the Family Head skill edges just past ADR in total damage. However, this is at the very noticeable expense of less stance damage, higher bullet spread that makes it more likely to catch on surfaces on the way to its target, and significantly less range and speed. So, no, I don't think I'll be using 25 FP for this. Thank you very much. Number 77, Onyx Repulsion. I have had it up to my dick and balls with people saying this is good for crowd controlling, as though it somehow justifies trading 27 FP for 24 stance damage. Onyx Repulsion takes an already mid weapon ash and turns it into a big purple snore fest of galactic proportions. If you find yourself caught in a situation where you're literally surrounded by an ocean of shitheads wanting to claw your eyes out, the game didn't throw you into that by accident. That happened because you think your dick is bigger than it really is and you need to calm the hell down. Point being, Onyx Repulsion gives you a utility for a situation you should be trying not to put yourself in regardless. Number 76, Spinning Wheel. Really having a hard time seeing the point here when the unique heavies do a fine enough job applying bleed with its 3 separate hits. Incompatible with the winged swords, swaddling cloth, and just about anything except exaltation. Almost all of its damage specifically comes from the fact that it just procs a status relatively quickly, and that doesn't make it special when a single charged heavy from the same weapon can rack up 3-digit bleed and 4-digit damage even without recommended builds. Number 75, Contagious Fury. Much like the Giant Crusher, Contagious Fury was a staple we just couldn't stop talking about for like 3 months, and I think the reason why everyone liked it to begin with was the sheer amount of buffs it actually stacked with. It's one of the most flexible unique buffs I can think of, but those benefits become extremely small when you inevitably make the mistake of literally just putting the damn thing away and the buff just deactivates immediately. And nothing good can realistically come from anything that can only last 30 seconds. What are you, my viewer base? Number 74, Fires of Slumber. All other status ailments outside of Deathblight being in the absurdly powerful positions that they are make sleep builds perpetually underappreciated. And when looking at skills like Fires of Slumber, I get it. I kinda get why. The bullet life is remarkably small, and it seems like blowing this out at any angle other than straight down results in half the bullets not even touching the ground, which is what you want because of the lingering fire it spawns afterwards. Not a single part of the skill deals any damage, which is a textbook example of a feature that just feels wrong enough that you aren't sure whether or not it was intended. And the only reason it hasn't been hypothetically fixed is because nobody wakes up in the morning willing to give enough of a shit to bring attention to it. Number 73, I Command Thee Kneel. You know what Elden Ring needs more of? Less floors. Walk into any castle or domain and tell those perfectly waxed, polished tiles to go fuck themselves. I don't care how recently you just cleaned them. I don't care if Tanith spent all day polishing the floor of that weird upper dining room area no one uses. Watch in amazement as all your hard work disappears before your very eyes. No wonder Godric was so disrespected by the rest of the kingdom. I'd have trouble too if I had to try this hard not to embarrass the living shit out of myself using a unique skill that looks like it was made for toddlers. Number 72, Erdtree Slam. This should be of no surprise to anyone here, as I've been vocal about my discontentment with the tantalizing charade of needing to aim my butt nuke for some reason. 120 physical and 142 holy damage in a single skill. Wow, that sure looks impressive. Sure is a shame aiming it feels as awkward as holding hands at the middle school dance, and you'll never see a single tick of that massive damage if your shiny golden ass cheeks land anywhere other than right on top of somebody's skull. Number 71, Oracular Bubble. 110 holy damage as a base looks way too good on this unique skill because I don't even think it does that much. It's one of the 79 tools you can use to execute Deathbirds, but that doesn't shake my headcanon that everyone fulfilling a playthrough with a bubble wand is doing it with a Glock pointed at their head off screen. If I'm legitimately approaching this skill with all the good faith I can muster, I can say that it maybe performs kinda well in a couple situations, as long as those situations involve giant screeching zombie birds. And tibia mariners, I guess. Number 70, Bear Witness. I think 3 of you may actually remember me saying this, but way back in my quick tips video for every unique skill, I said the cascading flames could flinch smaller enemies. And this is true. This was one of the last unique skills I wrote into that script, and that's because it took me that long to actually think of something good about it. Watching this absurdly drawn out wind-up and then having it miss its mark so consistently feels like sitting through an economics presentation delivered by a crypto YouTuber. It's pointless, it's underwhelming, and even if you did get something out of it, it still comes with the embarrassment of admitting to people how you spent your time. Number 69, Wolf's Assault. There's a spider on my fucking mic. Holy shit. Holy shitting fuck. God damn it. My general rule of thumb for good weapon skills can be explained by a simple equation. Hyper armor multiplied by damage over forethought. If you at least somewhat agree with that equation, then that's good. We're relatively on the same page. If you need me to explain it, then, well, perhaps it's time we start talking about why quantifying everything like it's a fucking word problem isn't always that important. Here's a math problem. John Elden Ring can level up to 28 times. He puts 10 into strength, increasing the AR of Wolf's Assault by 14 or something. I don't know if that's an accurate representation. If he puts 7 into Dex and the remaining 14 into Intelligence, what do you get out of Wolf's Assault? A fucking headache is what you get. Number 68, Angel's Wings. I'm not sure if saying it can deactivate flask usage is an honest representation of the skill's power or not. On the one hand, this makes it the perfect weapon for low-level invasions because of how early it can be found, but on the other, every instance of flask usage in PvE gets completely skimmed over and forgiven by this skill for like no reason. Halictree Knights can still heal to full HP with their stupid holy golden bitch flask. Perfumers can still do it. I tested this multiple times just to make sure I wasn't making a mistake, but either the skill wasn't working as intended, or it was, and any PvE benefits were consciously left out, and I'm not sure which decision makes me angrier. Number 67, Alabaster Pull. I just feel like it needs a bit of everything to even be within remote proximity of the definition of competent. The hyper armor isn't there, the damage always feels like it should be doing slightly more than it is. Even the force of the pull itself, I think, could be heightened just a little bit. The sword itself gets good scaling on strength, which makes it a decent weapon by itself, but that just knocks it into the obscure, ever-growing pile of weaponry that requires someone online to tell you not to ignore intelligence because that's apparently how you build for the skill. Number 66, Last Rites. It's fun to try and hypothesize which parts of each video have the most potential for disagreement. How dare me? I was concerning myself so much over what people thought of Onyx Repulsion being where it is that the cult of lunatics backing Last Rites almost completely slipped my mind. I can't rank this any higher just out of principle. It doesn't even try to be kind of different from Shared Order. It's just the same goddamn effect. It gives you both a percentage bonus and a flat bonus of, I think, 25 extra holy damage on any attack you do, making me believe it's just tricking people into thinking it's good because it looks complicated. It's still an aura buff, putting you in the awkward position of having to decide between this and Rallying Standard. Yeah, exactly. Number 65, Ross's Summons. I've pinballed back and forth lately between the two opinions that this unique skill is better and worse than Tibia's Summons in multiple different ways and from multiple angles, and after seeing numerous conversations of other people who seem to be just as split as I am, I've come to the definitive conclusion that it doesn't really matter which one you prefer, because they're both shit. If all 4 attacks connect, it gives you a combined poise motion value of 600, which, to its credit, is pretty nuts, but not as nuts as 600 being the default poise motion value from a charged heavy on literally any regular weapon. I lied, that's actually not nuts. That should make you feel at least relatively uncomfortable. Number 64, Bastard Star's Nebula. I'm gonna be completely honest, I could easily see a sufficient case argued for every single skill on this list all the way up to number 1, so the literal rest of this entire video is gonna be an extremely close race. I'm just saying that now because even though this skill is at number 64, it honestly performs fine in a decent array of situations. It's just not a particular skill I really enjoy using. Bastard Stars barely tickles the line separating the capable flails from the ones that might as well be slightly harmful baby rattles, but the unique skill is also incredibly awkward to land, and it kinda has the same physics of what I imagine would happen to a 40-pound Olympic shot putter that forgets to let go of the ball. Number 63, Flame Spit. I really just don't like this one. It's cheaper than most similar sorceries and incantations, but for a weapon skill, 28 FP is just really hard to justify. That deliberate awkward arc from the projectile feels magnetically opposed to anything you intend to hit with it, so much so that you can likely pinpoint the exact moment in this clip when my player character considers ending it all. Having absurdly powerful damage with an animation wind-up adjacent to a hospital waiting room places Flame Spit right on the border of, oh, you shouldn't have, and no, seriously, what the fuck is this? Number 62, Golden Tempering. Golden Tempering feels like a whole lot of passionate but very misplaced effort. It can potentially be the very first unique skill you come across, and the flat bonus of 100 holy damage misleads you into thinking this tiny pair of vegetable skewers will service you all the way to the end of the game. But the unique buffed heavies don't proc any effects from multi-hit talismans, or at least not as quickly as they feel like they should, and getting too invested in the skill just results in you walking around the Halig tree sulking for an hour about how your damage isn't what it used to be. Number 61, the Nox Hammer's Flowing Form. I still like it, I still think the damage is fine, but the idea of a silver tier cosplay is irreparably ruined due to the larval tier mask and its dumb sand-brained penalty to physical damage. Kinda stupid, but the hammer itself is- shut up, just shut up. You just made a double feature film like last week. Who cares? Just say it comes up short in a few places and move on. Number 60, Golden Retaliation. The damage is what the damage is. 250 holy base damage isn't something I'm insane enough to talk shit about publicly on a video thousands of people will probably watch. I say enough questionable shit off script, but you don't need to know about that. But after the Erdtree Great Shield introduces you to the invigorating thrill of holding a golden dinner plate in front of your face, it starts pissing out holy beams that retaliate after being shot with magic projectiles, which is a fun gimmick, but it's almost never more practical than just running up to someone you don't like and giving them the cool, refreshing taste of tetanus from your rusted anchor. Number 59, Corpse Piler. My notable absence in anything PvP related until somewhat recently means I never really got to understand just how heavy-handed the penalties were to this weapon as a whole, but I gotta say, I'm looking at those status MVs right now, and Oh boy, I get it. I get why no one uses this anymore. The total MV of all 6 weapon swings equal out to 441, and for reference, these are treated as percentages, meaning the number 100 is basically just a normal attack. In layman's terms, the entire weapon skill accumulates the same bleed buildup as 4.5 normal weapon hits. A little less than that. I don't know if I'm in the appropriate position to say it was deserved, but that's pretty damn bad. Number 58, Regal Roar. I feel like this one's constantly either over or undervalued depending on the builds that are using it. It's another one of those uniques that can't make up its mind on which talismans it wants to be boosted by. It is a Roar type skill, meaning it's affected by the Roar Medallion and the Highland Axe's passive, but the Godfrey icon boosting precisely 0 attacks on Godfrey's signature weapon is already such an overtold joke through the community that pointing it out isn't really even funny. It just makes me pissed off for no reason. Number 57, Blade of Death. I think this one's kind of funny. Both the blade and the bullet have their own attack IDs, which is something you'd assume it would have anyway, since that seems to be the usual. But jumping up in the air and anime posing like a Yu-Gi-Oh character that just drew a really fucking good card for 3 seconds kind of throws you out of immediate dagger range of most enemies. And that's hilarious because the poison V on that attack is 600. Not the bullet, just the attack. That attack you totally hit things with. It's nice for the HP debuff, but 180 holy damage is barely passable even in the mid-game. Number 56, the Wing of Estelle's Nebula. Wing of Estelle's Nebula has a stronger and more consistent spread and a quicker wind-up time than the Flail's unique variant. But much like my incredibly thinly veiled strategy to boost comments by placing one 8 steps higher than the other and seeing who complains about it, it matters very little when they're both starved of practical value that goes outside of, look at all this damage I'm doing. Main point withstanding, if I have to search the gutters of my brain just to find additional shit to talk about when I'm on your section, there's a strong chance you aren't that outstanding. Number 55, Claw Flick. It's more than just for meme builds. Not a lot more though. An embarrassingly small amount of this weapon skill is not used for memes. Exactly 1 number. That poise motion value of 400 pulls some goddamn weight. It demands spotlight, and giving it the MVs of a military Hummer paints the picture of a game with at least a semblance of a sense of humor. Even if the hitbox and animation delay make it where it's almost impossible to land this on someone who isn't currently suffering from lack of kneecaps. Number 54, Mists of Slumber. The bullets stay active for exactly 1.2 seconds, which would be very funny if it didn't trick so many people into thinking the skill was worthless. Hey, you see that purple glow stick you're holding that used to be a sword? I don't know how knowledgeable the general public is regarding the subject of visual game mechanics, but when something glows like that, it usually means it's been buffed by something. Stop fucking flinging out the weapon skill and then stuffing the sword in your back pocket like a half-eaten Twix bar. That's 70 extra sleep buildup per swing you're missing out on. It's not an extraordinary amount of buildup, but it's still good. Number 53, Waterfowl Dance. You know what? At least I can use it now. The damage of the full combo can climb all the way into the mid 4K range if someone is intellectually bereft enough to stand there and eat it. It still doesn't seem to win against Ashes with better hyper armor in PvP, but the first 2 strings of the skill are considered true combos now. Still gets beat by running clear in the other direction, but that's always been true unless you're fighting in some dude's studio apartment. And even then, you can just parry it. Number 52, Gold Breaker. Remember when someone would tell you to like the video and it would trigger this really weird, poorly put together rainbow border around the like button that didn't even wrap correctly around the full element? Yeah, the awkward arc on this skill is more pointless than that. It looks fun. The player character being airborne really helps with hyper armor, despite the best way to use the skill being precisely when you aren't surrounded because the awkward arc makes it a little difficult to properly judge distance. But the lack of fancy effects on the charged R2 similar to the Ruinous Greatsword makes forgiving this hammer for its trespassing a surprisingly tall order. Number 51, the Cypherpada's Unblockable Blade. Okay, so here's what I don't get about the Cypherpada skill. It's an amazing fist weapon with loads of DPS potential due to its unsplit, purely elemental damage, but forcing its skill to compete with the Coded Sword skill is like surfing on a used coffin. It's confusing, it's unimpressive, and the only people attentive to your shenanigans are asking you what the goddamn point is. Yes, a poise motion value of 600 is incredibly strong, I get it. You know what other skill has that? The Coded Sword, complete with an ability to cover an extremely wide area instead of just a forwards poke. And an MV of 600 is always going to perform better on a sword anyways. I'll be fair and bring up the 297 attack MV versus the Coded Sword's 250, but even then you're only ever using this skill to say go fuck yourself to one dude in particular. Number 50, Sacred Phalanx. It's powerful, it has a series of hits that are really good at fooling unseasoned players into thinking they know what a true combo is, and the lack of hyper armor is somewhat balanced by the overall speed of the skill. But let's bring out the golden holy elephant element in the room. This should have been a stanced unique skill where the R1 throws forth a line of holy spears that cover forward distance, and the R2 should have just been the sweep that aligns the spears in front of you for higher damage. You already had a working prototype of this on Ghostflame Ignition. All you needed to do was take off the DOT. Like, 2 people care about this. I'm complaining about nothing right now, but it still makes me mad. Number 49, Wave of Destruction. This one's another heartbreaker. I think specifically because the skill itself is so fun to use. It's very difficult to not have fun slapping a giant intergalactic paddle on the ground and watching everyone 20 feet in front of you show you their impression of a marooned spastic fish. All I'm saying is, when that requires 25 FP, despite the MVs only going as high as 170, and the wave itself only dealing 24 stance damage, I think people should be listened to when that stops being as fun. I think this is the biggest drawback of maining a weapon with a skill that scales with its level. You're essentially trading punching power for convenience. It'll get you to 2k very quickly, but ask any more from it and it'll just look at you like you're an ungrateful prick. Number 48, Sea of Magma. It's an old lawnmower that takes a while to spool up, but it actually gets the job done very decently. Sea of Magma is the hellbound malignant cyst attached to the Magma Whip candlestick, which is a mid-weapon by itself and commonly outperformed by other whips with fire affinity. But the use of the skill allows it to be held down. This is the crux of the skill, because subjecting your foes to a magma monsoon can rack up thousands of damage in just a couple seconds, not even including the stray pools of lava left on the ground afterwards. Number 47, the Regalia's Dancing Blade. Firstly, the Moonlight Greatsword is obviously going to leave a huge gap of performance between itself and its little brother, but only on strength builds. Sufficient Dex Arcane builds can take an uncharged, no talisman boosted, straight out of the box Regalia skill and push it up to 1,000 damage, if not just below it. The only thing that really makes the Moonlight skill so strong is the fact that it's on a Greatsword, and its MVs are multiplying Greatsword base damage, without any penalty to FP cost or animation speed. But that doesn't mean the Regalia skill can't wreck shit and isn't worth anyone's time. Number 46, Thunderstorm. An average player, some may even say a noob if you're feeling somewhat on the offensive side, might argue that everything great about Thunderstorm is bottlenecked by the weapon the game decided to place it on. However, a person with all their neurons firing at scientifically acceptable rates will notice that the Stormcaller Ash and Thunderstorm skill have the exact same hitbox radius, making Thunderstorm the longest range attack an axe build could ever hope to have. If anything, Thunderstorm saves this axe from being dog water tier, and the flat 120 lightning damage afterwards means it's got at least a little potential in PvP and heavy rain in-game areas like Dragon Barrow. Number 45, Glintstone Dart. Everything that makes this skill good, it copied from its more successful little brother, Glintstone Pebble. But that's not really to say the skill itself is bad. If you're gonna be a copy of anything, at least pick something that's productive. 155 base magic damage isn't great, but the silver bullet of the dart that saves most of its use is the fact that it can be charged to 190. Wow, I think that Tarnished over there just shot me with a shitty laser pointer. I've heard plenty of people complain about getting one shot with this thing in PvP, as though that makes it different from any other sorcery in the fucking game. It's still great damage, don't get me wrong, but when I see people online acting like it took down an SR-71 and hacked their YouTube algorithm to show neural, I get a little suspicious. I also don't know if I can say that without censoring. Number 44, Oath of Vengeance. It's endure with a couple extra side dishes and a hearty appetizer. An increase of 5 to all of your stats have some very obvious drawbacks involving soft caps, meaning there is a very visible ceiling to the usefulness of this buff. And opening up certain builds due to the stat increases doesn't really matter to me if I'm having to reapply the same buff every 60 seconds. If you're allergic to the sun, it's better to just stay home and find something else that's equally fun instead of just rubbing sunscreen on your face every minute. Like, shit's boring. 43, Viper Bite. I used to think this skill was a little pointless, even with Rod Exaltation, but apparently it got a much needed pat on the back during 1.07 that increased its poison buildup. But let me bring out my billboard and show you just how incredible this thing is. An MV of 264. Granted, it's on a small shield, so the MV being this high doesn't exactly bring it up to Xbox Connect tier or anything, but the base damage is 196 on a plus 10, giving this particular skill a base of, one second. 517 damage. Considering this is a small shield, that's pretty fucking nuts. And this shield can proc poison on whole-ass dragons in like barely 2 or 3 uses. Number 42, Spearcall Ritual. 20 FP actually is not an unreasonable ask for this, and despite having multiple projectiles like Radahn's Rain or Rain of Arrows, each spear comes with a small AoE that gives it a really consistent spread, making it just as good and in most cases much better at clearing out small enemies. The only missed opportunity I wish they capitalized on would be a repeated cast. I know that animation. I see that shit in my nightmares whenever I hear the low hum of someone spooling up that bitch-ass Sacred Spear. You could have made this a chain cast and you just didn't. Number 41, Establish Order. I say this with nothing but regret and disappointment, knowing this is one of my personal favorite skills. The kind of disappointment that isn't really even funny, but can only be synonymous with receiving an endgame legendary weapon with a skill that throws Chernobyl-sized damage and realizing the whole rest of the game is resistant to that particular damage type. I honestly don't know if placing it here is an accurate representation of the skill or not, but finding it this late is like buying a triple scoop ice cream cone and then just walking out into the beaming sunlight. It doesn't make it taste better or anything, it just means I have a fucking mess to clean up in 10 minutes. Number 40, Night and Flame Stance. Now, the FP cost is definitely a bit much. It used to be 19 and 23 respectively, and to be honest, that felt a little too low, so I'm not sure if such a happy middle ground exists or if I'm just being a spoiled baby bitch who's hard to please, but if you know which one it is, please leave it in the comments. I'm just enthralled to read them. The major benefit to using this is that you have a choice between which kind of damage you're dealing, a choice you aren't afforded on just normal R1s, which is a massive reason why this sword is kind of on the mid side of the ladder. 32 FP is a steal from me. It's stealing from me because it's a scam. But having a fire damage MV of 800 almost makes me feel ungrateful complaining about it, so I guess it's pretty good. Number 39, Zamor Ice Storm. I've preferred either the spell or the skill so many times in so many different videos, and over the course of so many different patches that have been made that I don't know which one is better anymore. Just use both. They're both good. Hyper armor, damage, status, this bitch is just stacked. It's not uncommon to see this thing hitting for around 3,000 damage without too many buffs, and if that sounds weak, well, maybe you can stand still while someone deals 3,000 points of damage to your ass if you're so goddamn hard, if you're so tough. Number 38, Tongues of Fire. Hi, welcome to the one section of the video where I place something 15 points higher than it probably deserves just so more people will pay attention to it. And for this video, that's Tongues of Fire. Using it automatically puts you in a guarding stance with the Great Shield, which is already a huge benefit, but it also does 13 stance damage per tick, which is pretty stupid. The shield poke meta was already annoying enough, but if the PvP sweats ever figure out how strong this is, we all might just need to take a damn break for a while. Number 37, Flame Dance. Who gives a shit about hyper armor when you can just munch up everyone else's? Slap on lead and hard tier and you're good to go. Nothing can stop you. Number 36, Shriek of Milos. Dear viewer, we live in an age of correction. What does that mean? It means we live in an age of the internet where you can accumulate enormous, massive, bloating sacks of clout by simply spotlighting and correcting the mistakes of other people. So Merry goddamn Christmas, I'm throwing myself a fucking content feast and every single one of you are all invited. First off, the enemy debuff lasts 30 seconds as of patch 1.10. The personal buff that enhances charged attacks is the part that lasts 40 seconds, not the debuff. The personal buff gets boosted by the Roar Medallion and the Axe Talisman, but not Shard of Alexander. Two-handing the Sword of Milos doesn't have any effect on the buff, but switching to another weapon entirely removes the personal buff a la Jellyfish Shield, whereas the enemy debuff still persists. So yes, having the Highland Axe in your offhand will contribute to its charged attack damage, even while two-handing the Greatsword. Activating the skill and then switching over to, let's say, power stance Frostbite katanas will not benefit from the personal buff, and therefore not be boosted by the Roar Medallion or Axe Talisman. But the enemy debuff is still there, so they will have lower defense, and the Frostbite debuff also stacks with the Shriek debuff. The weapon description also says it reduces status resistance, but there's no actual evidence of this effect anywhere in the params. I don't want to see a single person confused about how this works ever again. Number 35, Wave of Gold. I remember thinking this was asking way too much FP for whatever it did, and then I used it. It seems ending an entire lineage of Albinaurics is the only thing people think this skill is good for. We can blame Reddit, and of course we certainly will, but this combined with it strictly being a New Game Plus weapon means it got brute forced into this really awkward farming role when in fact this is one of the major examples of pressing a single button and just winning the game. So long as nothing in front of you is clever enough to figure out how jumping works, it'll die and it'll never come back. Number 34, Bloodhound's Finesse. It's good. MV of 195 on the first attack and 210 with the follow-up on a purely physical CGS. If you like it, criticisms won't mean shit to you, and if you don't like it or you think it's cheese, nothing I can say will probably redeem it for you. So I think the least incendiary decision I can make here is to just leave it at a simple it's good and just move on. Number 33, Magma Shower. It's an incredibly sad day when I hear complaints about how a certain weapon is obtained that I just have to look at and be like, yeah, I get it. But as much as I have to hold back from trauma dumping on social media like a middle schooler without easy access to a therapist, I can still put aside my hatred for the farming process and give out the massive credit the weapon skill deserves. It's about as powerful as you could imagine the regular ass spinning slash to be if the sword grew an asshole and started shitting lava everywhere. It literally feels like somebody's child concepted this skill. Like someone worked really hard on the animations, the balancing, the sound effects, and then some dude's 5-year-old son who watches too many Fortnite videos rolled up and said, "Make it shoot lava." And give it a 1% drop rate on a group of lizards nobody gives a shit about. Number 32, the Reduvia Bloodblade. Bloodblade by itself comes with an HP cost that barely dips its toes into the realm of annoying, but in most cases it's honestly not really hard to deal with. Reduvia's variant coming without that drawback isn't some decisive benefit or anything, just because a couple arguments for the regular Bloodblade have been spotlighted over time, such as abusing the hitbox on long weapons like the Nagakiva to be an even bigger tumor in PvP. Its damage is a good deal higher than the regular Ash, but the regular Bloodblade might end up performing better if placed on a couple different weapons. Number 31, the Regal Beastclaw. Although the strike of the hammer itself is based on weapon level, the damage of the outward fanning claws are determined by your stats, namely strength to be more specific, but it scales pretty decently with dex and faith too. It's really a shame the weapon this is attached to is doomed to an existence of boundless mediocrity by simply sharing half its damage pool with the holy element for no damn reason, because the skill by itself is a dump truck of harm and destruction. Purely physical, scales adequately with all 3 of the weapon's core stats, hits like an earthquake, and 20 FP is surprisingly low considering when you get the weapon. Number 30, Radahn's Rain. Radahn's Rain is all the crap you remember facing against Aldrich's dumbass arrow volley condensed into a single unique skill. The lower base damage is offset by the Radahn Spear being given a 20% boost when fired from this great bow. And even though the attack MVs look lower than even the Rain of Arrows Ash, provided the target is big enough, that damage boost accompanying Radahn's Spear grade arrows result in some of the greatest punching power I think I've ever seen from a bow in any size. You can down Placidusax with this shit before he even gets to his second phase. Number 29, Transient Moonlight. The damage values are not absurd. They're high, but they aren't ball-bustingly oppressive. I think that's been the case for this weapon since day one, but the reason I don't think Moonveil will ever not be considered a top pick in PvP is because of its sheer speed. The blindingly fast animation speed, combined with netcode written by the same 5-year-old child a few paragraphs ago, makes for a very uncomfortable experience when someone just throws this out at you. You always seem to just barely mistime something that results in you just not having an HP bar anymore. It's half decent at everything else. Poise, magic damage, flexibility that comes with it being a stanced weapon skill, but the one thing causing most of its problems, I'm sad to say, I don't think could ever be fixed. At least not without a lot of PvEers getting very mad. Number 28, Ice Lightning Sword. The Dragon Scale Blade is a full tilt swing and a miss that stands as an exemplary display of misplaced enthusiasm that will continue to disappoint players until the heat death of the universe. The unique skill, Ice Lightning Sword, participates in none of that shit, and on a good day I would argue is the single redemptive quirk that carries this katana out of absolute failure tier. Bam! 30 base lightning damage. Bam! Motion value of 207. Bam! 149 lightning damage with a lightning MV of 166 and a flat bonus of 160 lightning damage plus 80 frostbite for attack. This skill is the only reason to ever pick this up. Without this skill, it's just a can opener with some hair on it. Number 27, Thundercloud Form. The unbelievable stopping power given to this skill was enough to make me turn my head, but the numerous quality of life changes Thundercloud has been given makes me respect it like it were my own brother. I just fucking love this thing. I don't even have a good reason, it just feels cool to use. It is objectively badass to catch a Crucible Knight or Godfrey in the middle of a ground pounder attack, sail right over that stupid shit and just haymaker him in the jaw with an EF5 tornado. And Melania still can't dodge it for some reason, which makes it even better. Number 26, Great-Serpent Hunt. Great-Serpent Hunt has a poise MV of 900. I'm sorry, what? 900 on a great spear, no less. I understand concerns about it being too slow, but this is Elden Ring. This is the year of our Lord 2023 or 4, whenever the hell you watch this. Getting killed during an animation wind-up is but a problem of the past, like the Black Plague or liking Doug Walker, mistakes we know how to prepare for now. You have the Leaden Heart tier, you have the Bullgoat's Talisman, you have Endure, Oath of Vengeance, Opaline Bubble, fucking Iron Jar. It's slow and it's honestly inefficient in some cases, but when you see a poise MV of 900 on a Great Spear, you shut your whore mouth and you make that shit work. That's just what you do. Number 25, Destined Death. Do not pay attention to the attack MVs on this skill. They are misinformation. Misinformation alert. Not really. They're just really low. But what the MVs don't take into account is the gradual stackable buildup of the Destined Death DOT. Hitting something with the full skill is tantamount to calling in a carpet bombing of rocket-propelled crucifixes onto someone's face. It just does too much damage to not pay attention to. But unfortunately, that's just about all it does. I like the HP debuff for thematic purposes, but that utility equating to damage this skill by itself is probably going to slap for anyway. It just feels like an unnecessary embellishment. Number 24, Queen's Black Flame. It's a big-ass fire sword that does big-ass fire damage. It has barely enough hyper armor during the wind-up to tease the line between not enough and you only flinch if you're stupid, which means at the absolute least, the skill is usable. Max health scaling, MV of 230 on a Colossal Sword. I think leaving at it's good and you need to use it is probably the best respect I can pay here, because sometimes that's all you need to know. Number 23, Sorcery of the Crozier. I looked in the attack params to see what was going on here, and it just gave me a bunch of dumb zeros, so I have no idea where this weapon skill gets its damage from, but it seems to scale completely from the weapon level, because you can laser down fuckers for 1500 damage plus without even needing to look in the general direction of intelligence. And any magic boosting tools you have can push its damage even further. The obvious appeal here is the absurd magic damage without needing to level int so much as a single time, even if it does give the skill itself a very observable power ceiling. Number 22, Frenzyflame Thrust. Can I be honest on this one? When I decided to rank the War Spear as my #1 weapon of all time, very little about that decision was influenced by the Frenzyflame Thrust, especially considering its competition. The values on this skill are abnormally low. I can only assume the MV of 125 and the scalable fire damage of 155 get thrown out at relatively the same time, which is on the spear's downward thrust. I've seen it do amazing point-blank damage in practice before, but I can't tell if the values are just misleadingly low or if the faith scaling actually pulls that much weight. Number 21, Rallying Standard. You can put the halberd away if you want, not like the effect's going anywhere, but why the shit would you want to do that? Number 20, Ordovis's Vortex. The attack motion value for the full skill totals out to 369, 160 for the impact, and then an extra 3 slices of damage that hit for 66, 66, and 77 respectively. There's an attack MV for every single hit in the skill, which is how you know this 16-cylinder unaliving machine scales with weapon level and nothing else. I like skills that do this because they don't require any long-term investment. All you have to do is be built correctly for the weapon itself, and the skill can probably do more than what you'd ever ask from it. Number 19, Dynast's Finesse. The constantly underappreciated little brother hailing from the Finesse family tree, a tree that consists of exactly 2 branches. Sounds like a pretty shitty tree to be a part of, but don't get anything twisted here. The initial stab has an MV of 180, and this combined with 84 bleed buildup on a +10 with 40 arcane means everything in this game with a normal cardiovascular system just got significantly less threatening. Tap it once for damage, tap it twice for status. An incredibly flexible, unique skill that I don't think will ever... Holy shit, that guy just got launched. Number 18, Great Oracular Bubble. You might know this skill by its alias, the only good thing about the Envoy's Great Horn. Yeah, it takes it like a full minute just to sign a check. I don't recall what patch this was, but some change apparently just rolled out one day that drastically increased the acceleration of this bubble, and it's something that I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't seen it. This thing just fucking zooms now. FromSoft installed a goddamn V6 under this thing's hood, and now it just has places to be, which is great, considering this was the main drawback that prevented a lot of people from using it. Number 17, Ancient Lightning Spear. Be it weapon level or dex stat, this skill can use all of it, and by using all of it, I mean it requires both to be good. Without any buffs, a build with 40 dex can squeeze out around 900 from the uncharged bolt and a little over 1200 if charged. It's got an MV of 250 or 300 if you charge it, plus an extra bit of lightning damage on the side that's scalable via the dex stat. I respect the absurd range and the travel speed, and the knockback is nice if you're trying to billiard shot some little bitch off a high ledge, but no matter how hard I try to math my way into some good numbers, neither weapon level nor dex stat seem to be enough by themselves. It's a railgun, but it's a railgun that requires a commitment. Number 16, Miquella's Rings of Light. Yep, it's still stupid. 170 base holy damage that scales excellently with Faith, chain castable at only 11 FP, begging to be boosted by Holy Cracked Tear and Sacred Scorpion, incredibly fast, and with no penalty to the Halo Scythe's bleed buildup if the weapon hitbox strikes an enemy during the skill, making it not just bullshit, but bullshit with a high versatility. Number 15, Bloodblade Dance. I'm not even gonna try and analyze which motion value is being used where. Just look at how many attacks this single skill has. One of these has a poise MV of 300, so if I had to guess, that would be the final attack on either the first input or the follow-up. All you need to know about this is Bloodblade Dance eats kneecaps for goddamn breakfast. I cannot believe how consistently this just knocks everything over. A single use of this skill will topple over a troll like a Jenga tower and then proc blood loss as a secondary goodbye gift. Everything about it is just absurdly powerful to the point of laughing. Number 14, Moonlight Greatsword. There's already been so much confusion over which talisman it's boosted by that after a while, I think most people have realized they're just better off using Moonveil if they're looking for magic projectile damage. Which is sad because this skill trumps that piece of shit in every way possible. The Godfrey talisman can boost the projectiles, even though the projectiles aren't technically being charged, but rather they're the byproduct of charged attacks. The Axe talisman boosts the physical swing of the weapon during the charge, meaning it requires multiple talisman slots to actually min-max to efficiency. It's a resource glutton of a skill that honestly hits more than hard enough without any of that, but with the appropriate attachments, that glow stick can just wipe shit clean out of existence. Number 13, Starcaller Cry. For those particular moments where you just really don't feel like taking your hand out of your Cajun fries and using the right half of your controller, having a great attack MV and additional magic damage on the side means it can scale with both weapon level and your intelligence stat, ultimately giving it a higher ceiling for people who really want to torque as much damage as they can out of it, and it more than makes up for the below average range of the great swords themselves. Also boosted by the Roar talisman, in case anyone didn't know that already. Number 12, Cursed Blood Slice. Imagine you're rightfully thrown in prison for abusing such skills like Transient Moonlight and Corpse Piler over your years as a member of the Sweaty Chair faction. You need something new in your repertoire, something that catches people by surprise just because of how hard it hits, but isn't popular enough to make people think you're a piece of shit. The Cursed Blood Slice might be your new best friend. Having the fated combination of fire and bleed in a single weapon means this is not a placement a single person should find revelatory or shocking in any sense. The fire bursts that follow the weapon slash are good for roll catching, the stats are surprisingly accessible, and that's not even including the burlap sacks of damage and status you're just handing out to people with this weapon skill. It doesn't get much better. Number 11, Ruinous Ghostflame. Incredibly underrated for a unique skill. Ruinous Ghostflame borrows from the concept of Dark Souls 3's Onyx Blade, but doesn't forget to add in all the shit that actually makes it worth giving a damn about. With the Ghostflame buff active, the health in Steeple is given 110 flat magic damage with an extra 80 frostbite buildup. And when you're explaining buffs to people in videos, it's hard not to sound like you're just throwing out random numbers. You really need to pop this on a decent build to fully appreciate just how staggering the increase is. The Greatsword already has very comfortable base damage, and adding 110 magic on top of that honestly gives it the power of a colossal sword and maybe even then some. Number 10, Magma Guillotine. With the sheer extraordinary amount of damage you're just dropping into someone's lap with this, having the FP cost of 20 is honestly criminal. It upgrades with both weapon level and strength and faith, with scaling and damage that rival the goddamn blasphemous blade, and no one ever expects you to be mentally gone enough to pull out the follow-up in PvP, which is an added benefit. Number 9, Marae's Dancing Blade. You ever attach a half-inch drill bit to an industrial-grade impact driver and shove it through a jug of orange juice? Well, I wouldn't recommend it. You're gonna have to clean up your kitchen afterwards, but this skill is probably the closest you'll ever get to simulating that. Number 8, Ghostflame Ignition. The frostbite buildup is ridiculous. The damage of the R1 follow-up can climb into the 2k area by itself. The sound effects are cool. 200 base magic damage on the R2 that scales with intelligence. Everything about this skill makes sense, but having the choice of a ranged lingering attack and a close instant attack really just completes the feast. Everyone talks about how stupidly torqued it is because of the R2's punching power, but this skill is honestly multi-purpose as fuck. Number 7, the Coated Sword's Unblockable Blade. It's not the only reason this sword is so good, but undoubtedly it's the biggest. Covers a massive area in front of you, attack MVs of 250 and a poise MV of 600, meaning it doesn't even need a shield to go through to be useful, and at 18 FP, it's probably one of the cheapest unique skills on the market. On pure faith builds, it's already the single most reliable weapon you could possibly find, but that skill just opens up so much potential to be used by pretty much everyone. Number 6, Gravity Bolt. FP cost that only slightly leads Thunderbolt. Split physical and magic damage, which means it scales from all physical stats plus intelligence. Boosted by nearly half the goddamn Talisman lineup. I mean, do I really need to explain why this one's as good as it is? This has 415 stance damage. What the fuck? Number 5, Taker's Flames. I know you can't see me right now, but I'm shrugging my shoulders in real life. It's got a fire motion value of 510, and the weapon itself competes with the Godslayer's Greatsword in base damage, despite being much quicker. Where the fuck did you think this was gonna be? Number 4, Siluria's Woe. With a charged motion value of 276, hyper armor of a Brontosaurus, and the destructive power of a Brontosaurus with a stomach bug and a tree branch up its ass. Siluria's Woe takes the sentiment of holy damage being mid, and it challenges it to a reasonable extent. You know what? Fuck you. You know how exhausting it is writing hyperboles for shit all the time? 276 MV, that's all you really need to know. And the hyper armor of a T-Rex doesn't hurt either. A statement is made when you pull this out. That's all that really matters. Number 3, Bubble Shower. This is the kind of unique skill you see represented in 2,000-year-old cave drawings about how inhumanly destructive it was. Look, I drew a death bird in this one. He's screaming it's bullshit because this skill is bullshit. 16 FP is cheaper than most ordinary replaceable weapon ashes by a noticeable margin. And that's doubly noticeable given the red marks across the ass cheeks of all the enemies you're slapping. Are we allowed to say the damage you can get on this thing is stupid yet? Because it is. Enemies stacked with a high holy resistance can't even stand up to it because the damage output is just that ludicrous. Number 2, Surge of Faith. I have no idea how this didn't make it into the weapons video, but we need to talk about how this hammer works for a minute. 230 base fire damage. Now, how does a wimpy piss pants little number like that turn into 10,000 plus damage against certain enemies with a single use? Let's start with the fireballs. Each round of fireballs deal a base damage of 55, and that's 4? I think 4. I'm counting 4 in the params. That one on the end is the post hit that leaves lingering shit on the ground. Don't worry about that one. And if there's anything we know about multi-hit projectiles, it's that they become nonsensically strong when you start heading into the mid-game and beyond. That's a total base damage of 450 provided everything actually hits. I've been throwing numbers at you all goddamn day, so even if you don't know anything about anything, I think I've given you a good enough eye to recognize and appreciate the pneumatic hammer adjacent damage of this skill. However, there exists a unique weapon ash, so traumatizing, so imperiling, so absent of even baseline respectability, that I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask those of you with particularly sensitive morals to look away from the screen. This is the Bloodboon Ritual. Who gives a shit about math? You don't care about base values or motion damage or whatever terminology I can throw around to make myself sound more credible. Look at these numbers. Look at how little effort it takes to just shove this skill right into everyone's shitty life. Single target damage, AoE damage, bleed buildup, multiple hits, easily boosted by talismans, fire damage, scales with both player stats and weapon level, and one of the coolest looking visual buffs in the game as a nice little bow on the present. It's the kind of embellishment that turns try-hard weapons into legends. The cherry on top of the brain damage sundae. I know why it's here, you know why it's here, who gives a shit, the video's over. I don't think a single person was shocked by this, but nonetheless, the only way I think people can even watch videos this long would be if they had this running in the background while they did something else, specifically so I would get the watch time, and that's just really fucking cool of you. I know things have been business first lately, but I really appreciate everyone who watches this and actually finances this shit I call a job. You know, like Enlisted, who financed me by sponsoring this video. Play it for free on PC and Xbox and PlayStation right now by using my link in the pinned comment and description. Remember that new players on PC will also receive a special bonus pack that includes multiple items, in-game currency, and 3 days of premium.